house. I'm alone in the back room. Go up there and just kill him. Shh, she'll fucking hear you. Like that? Can't kill Roger. He's a good guy. I hate it here. We got our lights on again. It's all good. Catch him. Kill him.
Dude, are you talking to yourself back there?
No, I'm not talking to myself.
Sounded like you were talking to yourself.
Crazy people do that. I ain't crazy. I ain't crazy.
Okay. I believe you.
Crazy about these crazy sales we have here.
You're being kind of weird today, dude. Are you drinking back there?
Why you always ask if I'm drinking? How come you never ask, hey, Evil, how you doing? Evil, you comfortable back there? Hey, Evil, why don't you come up front, hang out with me today?
I don't ask because I don't care.
One of these days I'm going to pull the pin on this thing.
Pull the pin on what thing?
No, nothing.
Dude, you know I'm just busting your balls. Like, you're doing pretty fucking good back there.
Sweeping up the back room. Sweeping the back room like a motherfucker. It is hard work to make something this pretty.
Well, while he's sweeping, I suppose I can just hang out and wait for a customer, I guess. Oh, hello, internet fans, and welcome to 3B Video. I'm your host, Rotten Roger DeMarco, and today we're going to be talking about Johannes Roberts' 2010 film, Expelled. It's a 2010 film, but it was released in 2013 under an alternate title, or F. But here is your plot synopsis if this movie seemed to have slipped under your radar. You've got a group of teachers after hours in this high school who are under siege, under attack by a bunch of hooded hoodlums who are hell-bent on murdering their bullshit teachers. And it's awesome. But before we get into my overall thoughts of this super rad little movie, first, let's take a look at Ryan Rogers! Splatter facts. We have 10 dead bodies. We have 0 titties. We almost get some titties, but it's kind of weird for teachers to be getting naked after school in the building. Kind of strange. We have good old-fashioned teacher assault, school system horseshit, a milkshake murder message, hooded hoodlum horror, breathy la-las, one scary basketball, parkour prowling, and police number padding. The methods of death include, but are not limited to, dumpster fire, off-screened, you sons of bitches. Suspense doesn't need blood, right? Throat slash, beaten to death, welded, off-screen, almost, and wrenched. Alright, so now on to my overall thoughts of this film. I really enjoyed this film, guys. I think that this is one of those top-notch little horror films that actually has something to say under the surface of it just being a horror film. I think that it points fingers and sort of exposes the school system for some of the things that are done wrong in the majority of public schools. And I'm not saying that the killers are in the right for what they do,
but I understand it.
but this also is just a nasty little film. You know, it gives us what we want in terms of all of this very heavy suspense, this very threatening group of teenagers in these hoodies with black masks, so you don't know who they are. And they're just silently there in the background, sneaking around and like enclosing in on all these teachers. It doesn't really rely on music cues or anything like that to let you know that they're even in the frame. You just have to pick up on it as it goes along. It's very intense. This movie is not filled to the brim with gore or nudity. It's not one of those films. This movie has a very John Carpenter-esque feel to it. It's a very suspenseful ride where the whole time you're watching it, you're like, boy, I hope something good happens. scenes.
Man, I hope these people figure this out.
It's one of these movies that doesn't get a lot of press, and that's kind of a sad thing because this is a great film. This director also did 47 Meters Down and a couple of other things. He's a very talented director, and this movie definitely pays tribute to the Carpenter stuff, to the Hitchcock stuff, and it gives us a decent amount of blood, you know? It gives us a decent amount of gore, but that's not the point of this movie. The point of this movie is that we are afraid to go down the long hallway. We're afraid to go into a room by ourselves because we don't know what's waiting around the corner. And that's what is utilized the best in this movie, is these long hallways, these big wide open shots showing you just how big and how dark this school is and how many places there are for these killers or villains, whatever you want to call them, to hide. And that alone just gives you this sense of unease. Like, you're at the mercy of the filmmaker. You have no idea where these kids are gonna pop out. And it's hell on the heart, I'll tell you that. It's a very exciting horror movie. So this movie follows the story of this one teacher named Robert, who at the beginning of the film gets unjustly sent on a leave because he has an altercation with a student. And this movie is basically all about the struggles that he has once he is finally allowed back into the school system and all the red tape that's involved with having a teacher who has been accused of these violent acts. And this character is going through so much stuff that isn't just about the job. He's separated from his wife. His daughter doesn't respect him or love him anymore. And the problem is that his daughter goes to this school. So he teaches his daughter in this school. And he's trying his best to hold on to that life that he wanted to have. You know, the family, the good job. He's cracking. He's kind of losing his shit. He's getting the short end of the stick. He's being treated very differently because of something that he was accused of doing. It shows in this actor's performance. He's very tortured. He's very torn between how to be a good person and, you know, just being at the end of his rope with all of the bullshit. This film does have a cheaper look to it because it is a lower budget independent film, but that doesn't detract or take away at all from the suspense, from the terror in this movie. It doesn't look like a Hollywood movie. So that is one thing that you need to get into your head when you go into this movie. This is not going to look as polished as some of these other films, but it has this grittiness to it. It makes you feel very similar to watching Wes Craven's Last House on the Left. It has this almost a documentary-esque feel to it. So you feel very voyeuristic watching this movie. You feel like, again, you cannot help. You're at the mercy of the filmmaker, and that's effective and that's dangerous. And this movie is phenomenal because of that vibe that it gives off. And another thing about this movie that makes it so intense is that the killers are fast, they're quiet, they're agile, you know, they're unseen for most of the time, but they're these almost like parkour kids, you know, they're climbing on top of lockers, they're sliding down staircases, they're jumping from fucking building to building type stuff. It's very threatening when you have a bunch of middle-aged people trying to evade these made out of rubber teenagers. And that's why this movie creates this sort of top-notch suspense that you don't really see in a lot of horror movies, because a lot of horror movies now rely on that stinger, that jump scare, and this movie doesn't. This movie relies on the way you feel during the entire scene. I think that that is very effective. This movie kind of unjustly goes under the radar for a lot of people because it actually has more intensity and more atmosphere than 99% of the newer horror films that come out, because most of them are so paint by numbers that we've seen it all before. And with a movie like this that kind of comes out of left field and doesn't give you what you're expecting, you expect certain jumps at certain points. You expect certain revelations. You're expecting like a certain outcome. You know, you have this image of the play-by-play of a horror film already predisposed in your brain. We've seen so many of them that that's where we're all at. We expect introduction, conflict, resolution. We expect all of these things, and we have a pretty good idea of connecting the dots. That's most horror fans can figure it out from Jump Street where something's going. And this movie doesn't do what you expect. And I think that that's fantastic because we get so comfortable in our own skin with these types of films where we just know what's going to happen. So, oh, it's not going to scare me. I've seen this formula a million times. And this one, relying on suspense rather than jump scares, does its job in spades. And I think that you will absolutely love this movie. So, in my personal opinion, this movie is 100% popcorn as fuck. Because this is the type of film that would make John Carpenter and Alfred Hitchcock proud. This is the type of movie that you want to watch by yourself, in the dark, surround sound up, enjoying it, and go along for this ride. This is a different type of horror, just as fun as a popcorn horror film, but for different reasons. This movie needs to find an audience, so if I have swayed you to check out The Expelled, click the link in the description and get a copy for you today. But I suppose I should probably get going, because after all, there's a lot of movies out there, and somebody's got to watch them. So why not me? Right? Maybe next week, dude. Maybe next week I'll let you come out here and work out front.